I can't even watch the end. I can't even watch the end of this match. This is horrific from Leeds United. And in my estimation, losing to Fulham at home like this, having lost, having not won the last 8 matches, the last win this team picked up was against Chelsea. This Leeds United team has not looked good under Jesse Marsch since then. And I think he needs to go. I think he needs to be sacked today. And here's why. I think there are going to be loads of Americans, if they even see this, that come on and say, well, that's not fair. That he hasn't been given time. He needs more time, this, that, and the other. Life isn't fair. And the reality is that, yes, Marsch didn't get the things he was asking for in the transfer market. I think the most culpable people in Leeds United's form right now are the board and the lack of investment in strengthening the squad at the forward and left back position and center half position. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't matter. Jesse Marsch does not have these guys scoring goals. He does not have these guys playing well. And it's pretty clear that the system he wants to play requires parts that he didn't get in the transfer market to play. So as a result, you have to look, how can we save this season with the players we've got? Because you can do one of two things. You can sack Jesse Marsch, or you can say, maybe he can do something different with the players. We've not seen him do anything different with the players. The players are the players we've got. I could spend the video talking about how we're not strong enough at left back, although this is not a bash against Pascal Struijk. I think he's done an amazing job, but he's not a left back. He's a center half, not a left back. So I could complain about, hang on, the blinds were too bright. We could complain about player personnel all we want, and that would be 100% valid. And there are things that Jesse Marsch cannot control. That is 100% true. That being said, the job of a Premier League manager is not to be able to only win matches if you get everything you want. The job is not to be able to form a squad in the image you want them if you get perfect expenditure. Because Leeds are not that kind of club. Leeds are not going to splash the money that Marsch would want to get the players in to play his system exactly the way he wants it. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to have to make good with a Rodrigo, with a Patrick Bamford, with a Jack Harrison. You're going to have to make good with Robin Cox, with Liam Coopers, with Junior Firpo's in the lineup, with Pascal Struijk out of position. You have to make do with this. And the reality, I think, he's not done enough with the players he has. And that's why I think he has to go. It's sad. I don't think it's necessarily fair. I'm not going to hop on this stream and say, oh, yeah, absolutely 100% fair. Jesse Marsch has been given every opportunity to succeed in the world. No, Jesse Marsch clearly cannot make Patrick Bamford make a penalty kick. He clearly doesn't have anything to say over whether Jack Harrison disappears. Pulled one back, but it'll be 6 straight winless. Yeah, it will. Wait, hang on. It should be, when I left, it was 3-1. Are you telling me that's not it anymore? I'm live reacting to this. Oh, no. Okay. It's 2-3. I still don't think for me, it doesn't matter whether they get a draw out of this or not. You would expect Fulham at home in Ellen Road, Jesse Marsch to be able to roll out a side that can win. Playing philosophy would be damned, right? You'd think that you'd be able to line up the team in a way that would be hard to score against and could maybe score some goals. They still don't look very likely to score goals when when the game isn't completely chaotic, which that's what happens at the end of matches. I'm beside myself because the reality is that Jesse Marsch had a real opportunity at Leeds United to make this team difficult to play against and to go out and get goals. And in the first couple of matches in the season, it looked like that was going to be the case. They were clearly the better side against Southampton. They were all over Chelsea, a Chelsea team in crisis, but they were all over them. And they have played better for longer stretches of matches against teams that I think last season would have rolled them over. But it doesn't matter if you don't get results. This is a results-based business. And if in a perfect world, I would snap my fingers and a bunch of players would get the sack. In a perfect world, you snap your fingers and Jack Harrison doesn't play like he's played the last 8 matches. You can look at the form of Leeds United and correlate poor results with the form of individual players. And that's what I'm trying to say. The players are not good enough. Jesse, I think, has not got stuck into the players enough. I don't think he's made bold enough moves to get results or to galvanize the players on the pitch. I think Jack Harrison has been really, really poor. I'm going to pick on him a lot. He's been terrible. I can count on one hand the number of times he did something positive in this match without just losing the ball arbitrarily to weak challenges or playing the ball to no one out into empty bits of space where nobody was making a run. And this isn't just, it's not Jack Harrison's fault we're in the relegation zone. But what I'm saying is the players have not been good enough. And it's the manager's job to prepare the players and put them in best position to win. Has he done that? We can look at bad luck. We can look at circumstances. We can look at, like, again, Bamford missing penalties against Arsenal, where you'd imagine we'd get a 1-1 draw. In fact, if Rodrigo doesn't make that silly error that results in an Arsenal goal, maybe we nick that game 1-0. But it doesn't matter. Like, I think what some fans fail to realize is the difference between good teams and bad teams. Everybody's a good, well, I wouldn't say everybody, but pretty much every footballer on every Premier League team is the best footballer you've ever met. Far and away. They're all good. Everybody's good. Everybody has a good collection of players to some degree. But the difference between good teams, as in like mid-table teams, we're not talking about top 4, top 5 teams. Those are in a different stratosphere. The difference between teams that are safe in the Premier League and teams that go down are individual mistakes. That's the difference. That they lose, and they find ways to lose matches instead of finding ways to win matches. Every team that's ever gone down, you can probably look at that side and say, hey, not enough individual brilliance and too many individual mistakes. It just seems like they always have bad luck. The bad teams seem to always have the bad luck because guess what? They're bad teams. Part of the reason they're bad teams is because they have managers that try to play aspirationally instead of looking at the players they've got. Now, yes, Leeds brought in Jesse to play a particular way. Jesse brought in players to play that way. He didn't get all the players he needed to play that style. So you throw out the style and play what you need to play in order to get results. He's not done that. We need to make it very clear that, yeah, we can go about every single match and say, here's why we didn't get that result, individual error. Here's why we got that result, individual error, or bad luck, or poor officiating. Yeah, that's true. That's true for every single team in the Premiership who's in a difficult position versus teams in the Premiership who are in not so good position. The margin between Fulham and us is not that huge in terms of ability, right? But Fulham is safely mid-table right now. In fact, I think they're in 9th or 8th position after this match. So that should tell you all you need to know. It's a game of thin margins. And what the managers are, football is a simple game. I know we can look at managers like Thomas Tuchel. We can look at managers like Mikel Arteta and Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola and convince ourselves that football is a super complicated chess match where you need to know all the openings, all the defenses, all the variations. And that may be true for a very small percentage of teams in the world. And I think that's what separates them from everybody else, aside from the fact that they spend more money than everybody else. If we look, there's a huge correlation and it's a causation. The teams that spend the most money have the best players. And then the teams that can spend the most money have the best players, buy the best managers who can make them play the best tactics. I'm really angry right now, so I'm sorry if my words don't make sense. But in the mid-table of top leagues and in the lower half, it's not necessarily about tactics. It's not going to be about playing the job of the manager is to prepare the players to win the game, to set them up to win. Has Jesse Marsch done that? No, I don't think he has. Right? And the reason I don't think he has is because managers that prepare teams to do that win the results that they should get. They don't lose 5-2 to Brentford. They don't lose to Fulham at home. They don't lose to Aston Villa. They don't lose, was it a draw or a loss to Everton? I don't have it in front of me. I don't even remember. These are winnable matches. Right? And we can say, oh, we look so bright and we control possession. We control the run of play because we don't control possession, but we control the run of play. They scored against the run. That part of that is management, guys. If you roll out players playing in a way that is too complicated for them or that they can't simply distill into basic plans and executable strategies and tactics, then you're not doing your job. And I think Jesse Marsch is deploying a system that these players cannot play. Some of them can, some of them have, but not all of them have. And we could whine about the board. And yes, long term, macro, let's take a step back. Step back, macro, the board is responsible for where Leeds United is. They sold Rafinha, they sold Calvin Phillips, they brought in other players, but a net spend of close to zero. That's not investment. That's not investment. That's keeping your margins high. Because guess what? All that revenue Leeds United brings in, and they are a global fan base. Let's be clear. I'm broadcasting from the United States. We saw in the Australian preseason tour, they have a global fan base. It's a huge brand. So all that money that rolls in, those season tickets where nobody can get a fucking seat at the stadium at Ellen Road, all the money that they generate and bring in, you better believe that's going into investors' pockets. And when they invest no new money, and that means no net spend, right? So again, if you sell Rafinha, if you sell Calvin Phillips, and then you take that money that you recouped and then you spend it on players, and you're not spending more than that, that is a net zero investment. You're going to get a team that is net zero improvement on the one you had last season. In fact, I would go ahead and say I would rather have Rafinha in this side than have invested in some players that aren't going to see the pitch. And I want to say something to some Leeds United fans. We can look at William Gnonto and say, well, why isn't he on? Fans everywhere do this thing where the players they've never even seen play are like the hidden saviors that are going to sort it out. He wouldn't have made a difference. I'm so sorry to tell you. We cannot pin the hopes of our Premier League side on a 19-year-old who's never played a minute of Premier League football. People that are calling for Jaffe to play more minutes, we cannot pin. Jaffe hasn't dominated cup matches against League One and championship sides. To think that it's a player personnel issue. No, it's two things. It's lack of investment, and it's Marsch not getting the most out of the players he has. You have to go with guys like Rodrigo. You have to go with guys like Bamford, and you have to play a system that's going to benefit those players, not try to force them into a system that idealistically, if you got everything you wanted in the transfer market, I have no doubt Leeds would probably be right around mid-table. If we had invested in a striker and a proper left back, we could play Pascal Struijk at the center half position so we could actually have a center half that can bring the ball up and distribute and pass well. If we had reinforced some of these positions and added more depth to the side, so if a guy like Tyler Adams goes out, we're not able to disrupt possession in the midfield quickly. Yeah, I think they'd be fine. They didn't get that investment. So Jesse should have waited before forcing a system that doesn't suit the players he has. Guys, there's a reason Jack Harrison looks horrible. Horrible. And I think there's two parts to that reason. Number one, because Jack Harrison isn't a mentally fit footballer. We've seen this even in systems that benefit him. Under Bielsa, Jack Harrison at times looked amazing. And at times he's looked absolute shit. And there's a reason for it. He's not a mentally strong footballer, right? So you can't, as Jesse Marsch, expect a mentally weak footballer to go into your system that doesn't benefit your style of play. Jack Harrison's style of play is to get the ball out wide in individual 1v1 situations and use his pace and trickery to get into the box, either send a ball in or have a shot on target. That said, do I think if Jack Harrison had a little bit more neck to him, if he was a little bit more mentally capable and had more fortitude to him, that he could play in the system? Yeah, he has the attributes to. But that's the thing. We're not aspirational coaching here. Like, you don't have time in the Premier League to put your arm around people and teach them your ways for, fucking 10, 11, 12 matches because you end up in a relegation battle. You can do that if you have infinite squad depth and have people that can get onto the pitch right away and make a massive difference for you. Leeds United don't have that. They don't. So yes, first responsibility goes to the board. Absolutely. The board are absolute shit. Listening to Kinnear talk about how we have an international number 9 in Rodrigo as if he's been lighting up international scoreboards it's sickening. That said, we cannot say that Jesse Marsch has done a good enough job with this crop of players. Listen, I don't like to say it. I wanted Jesse, but if you haven't seen, there aren't a lot of Americans managing in the Premier League, right? And it has nothing to do with the fact that he's American, that he's going to get the sack, right? Him being American had nothing to do with him getting the job. And the only stick he's gotten from being an American, is from some national press, like Gabby Agbonlahor, who think it's funny to make a Ted Lasso joke. This isn't about nationalities, right? If Jesse Marsch was German, if Jesse Marsch was English, he would also deserve the sack. right? So I don't want any U.S. men's national teams team fans coming in here. You can tell how heated I am. I'm totally inarticulate right now. I don't want them coming in the chat and saying, well, he deserves more time or this is anti-American bias. No, it's not. No, it's not. The reason guys like Sean Dyche get jobs in the Premier League, and it's not because they're great tacticians. It's not because they're great footballing brains. You know what they're great at? They're great at doing one thing: looking at the players you have and playing a very simple system designed to limit goal scoring opportunities for the other side and force feed the ball into the back of the net. That's what they're good at. That's what a guy like Sam Allardyce was good at. But Sam Allardyce getting the England job was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. And of course, that didn't work out very well for him. But there are reasons why guys like Roy Hodgson, when Roy was younger, well, he's never been young, has he? But, before sort of the twilight of his career, why he was great with a Fulham and crap with a Liverpool, right? Because it's a different job trying to get a low relegation fighting side. When Roy Hodgson took over for Lori Sanchez, that Fulham side was destined for relegation. Before Lori Sanchez came in, Chris Coleman was managing them, and they were barely surviving relegation, right? So there's a difference between a manager that can come into a poor side that is barely hanging on and turn them into a decent mid-table team. And there's a difference between doing that and going to a club like Liverpool and being able to play with that caliber of player against where you're expected to win every match, right? You have to be a tactician to do that with those budgets, with those players. Jesse Marsch is a low to mid-table manager who thinks he's managing top sides. Now, I don't mean that literally. I don't think that Jesse Marsch goes to bed and be like, oh, I have players that are the caliber of Liverpool. No. But Jesse's system in Salzburg worked in Salzburg because he had the best side in the country, right? So you can play this high press, like chaos with clear directives on what you're going to do and being able to execute it when you get the ball in possession. These guys, relative to the rest of the Premier League, are not good enough to do that. I'm not saying you could take that Salzburg team and throw them in the Premiership and that they do really well. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when you had that Salzburg team against those other players in the Austrian league, Salzburg looked pretty damn good, and they can execute that playing style. Jesse has been an ideologue on playing style. You can be that if you have top players or players that can, top to bottom throughout that side can execute your style of play. So is it fair that Jesse Marsch is going to get the sack or should get the sack? No, I don't think it's particularly fair. You call in a manager, you want him to execute a certain style of play, and then you don't give him the players. That said, it's fair in this sense. Marsch should have been able to look up and down that training pitch, realize he's got Liam Cooper playing center half, Robin Koch playing center half, Pascal Struijk playing left back, and with Junior Firpo playing left back. Patrick Bamford, go down the roster, the side. Go. I almost said roster. The English people would have been pissed. He should have been able to look at those players and be like, we have like half the side can play the way I want them to. The other half can't. And I think what he's done is he's thought, well, the side that can are going to raise them up, and I'm going to be able to train these guys up. That's arrogant. You can't do it. You can't, and you don't have the time to do it. You don't. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful that Leeds United are where they are. And I'm not saying the disgrace is just Jesse Marsch's, but somebody has to be accountable, right? And this is the job of a manager. Yes, you cannot control individual errors, but if they happen every single match, right? You can't sack the players. You have to ask why these players are put in positions where they're panicking and playing boneheaded balls back, losing possession in bad areas, missing penalties, getting red cards. Players that aren't mentally fit, who aren't confident in what they're doing, who aren't sure of what they're supposed to be doing on the pitch, make stupid mistakes, right? Now, strong-minded players, so you can put them out in any system and they'll execute it just fine. We're not talking about those. Leeds doesn't have those. I think there are a couple players on Leeds United that can play that way. I think Pascal Struijk can play that way. I've been really impressed with him. I think he could play in most Premier League sides outside of the top 10. I think he's good. I think Robin Koch is okay. I think that, he would get a game in other sides. I think Liam Cooper is a championship level center half. I think Rasmus Christensen Probably belongs back in Salzburg or in the Bundesliga. The fact that Luke Ayling, who is a championship level right back, looked better than him today tells you a lot. I don't think he's been a successful transfer thus far. I think Tyler Adams can do it. I think Tyler Adams thrives in a system like this, and he understands it completely. He has a lot of knowledge from playing in this system before. But is Patrick Bamford a player for this system? Is Jack Harrison a player for this system? I think Rodrigo has looked better in the system than he would in others because Rodrigo is not a Premier League footballer. He's not. Diego Llorente can't play in the system. I don't think Diego Llorente could play in most Premier League sides. So if you don't have a side that on its own is strong enough to contend in the Premier League, then you can't force them to play a system that is only going to work if top to bottom you have players that can play it. And that's where Marsch has screwed up, in my opinion. I think Marsch has done everything he can for player management, to be honest with the players. I think that aside from not acknowledging the fans away at Leicester earlier in the week, I think that he's done as good a job as you can do as far as fan stuff goes after coming after a legend like Marcelo Bielsa. But we have to ask ourselves, I think it was right for Bielsa to get the sack because the team was going down, right? But was it because of Marcelo Bielsa the team was going to be relegated? No. The team was going to be relegated under Bielsa because the board didn't invest. They didn't replenish the side. And we can say all the things we want about, he wanted a small side. But no, he wanted certain types of players and they didn't give them to him. What was he supposed to do? So yeah, couldn't stop the bleed. He didn't have the players to do it. The message got lost and you make a change. It's not because Jesse Marsch brought in some simplification or some amazing tactical system that they stayed up last season. They stayed up last season because they got a boost for the new manager and Jesse's really good at motivating guys. But that only lasts for so long, right? I mean, you have to have a coherent plan that the players can execute. That defense is booty. Owner can't afford to stay in Prem. I 100% agree with this. EB made that comment. EB, I 100% agree with this. So if you look at every single side in the Premiership, you're going to see where they're going to finish based on the center half tandem they have, right? We can talk about forwards, and that's obviously super important. It's important to score goals. But if you have center halves that are good, right? So even when Leicester was having issues, with Wesley Fofana back there, solid side. Chelsea went from being a side outside of the top four under Lampard because they were starting Kurt Zumas and Tomores of the world, which not bad players, don't get me wrong, but not Chelsea level, to starting players like Andreas Christensen and Antonio Rudiger. Rudiger's now at Real Madrid and Christensen, Barcelona, I think. But I would say Antonio Rudiger, last couple seasons, he was at Chelsea, one of the best, if not the best, center half in the world before Virgil van Dijk's form fell off a cliff. The point I'm trying to make here is that if you don't invest in key positions, right? If you have guys like Diego Llorente, Robin Koch, I think is a fair center back. So I'm kind of lumping him in with the group, but he's not good when paired with these guys, right? Liam Cooper's of the world. I think Pascal would be fine, but he's had to play left back, right? So again, we could talk about players all day long. We could keep scrolling around and say, because I do believe that A1 responsibility was on the board to bring in players to execute a system of a manager that hired to implement a system. It doesn't make sense to hire a guy like Jesse Marsch and then be like, all right, play some sort of version of Bielsa ball with a version with these players that doomed Marcelo Bielsa. Because let's be clear, Marcelo Bielsa did not sack himself. The players failed Marcelo Bielsa. Let's be very clear about that. The players failed him, right? That's why Bielsa got the sack. It wasn't because he's not a good manager. Yes, we can say he was inflexible with his tactical system, but you hire a guy to execute a system, right? So Bielsa didn't fail Leeds United. Leeds United, the board and the players on the pitch failed him. They overachieved for a period of time. He got them promoted. They didn't invest in the side, and lo and behold, it went down. Look at the Premiership table year upon year upon year upon year. The sides that go down are the sides that don't reinvest in the side. It's very simple, right? That don't reinvest in the players, that don't rebuild. You cannot. I mean, a side with Rafinha nearly was relegated last year. So you're going to sell Rafinha and expect us to score goals. So absolutely, I don't want anybody to confuse me. I don't think Jesse Marsch is the most important problem at Leeds United. I think he's the guy you can do the most about quickest. You're not going to be able to sack the board. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. It would be wonderful. I think it would help, but I don't think it's going to happen. So what you have to do is look and ask yourself the question, is this manager with these players, because you can't sack them all, and look at the teams we're going to run up against before we hit the World Cup, right? And before the January transfer window. Can Leeds survive? I don't see it. You've got teams like Nottingham Forest beating Liverpool's. You've got Leicester's recovering. West Ham is recovering. I think the only teams that we're better than in the Premiership this season are Wolves. We're not better than Southampton. We didn't beat them. We're not better than Everton. We didn't beat them. Do I think that we looked better in those matches? Yeah. Did I think that we were unlucky? Yes. That's the difference. That's the difference. The difference is bad teams find ways to lose matches and good teams find ways to win them. Leeds United finds ways to lose matches. They leaked 2 goals, one against the run of play, and were down 3-1 in a match that they should have won. Now, I think what did the match end? 3-2? I didn't even bother. 2 minutes before the match ended, I got up and left because I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle watching this team once again self-destruct. But at some point, you have to have a manager who, Jesse Marsch, in my opinion, is not a relegation to mid-table manager. And he hasn't proven that he's higher than that either. I think Jesse Marsch is a manager that does well when he gets what he wants in the transfer market. If he doesn't, and I mean 100% of what he wants, if he doesn't, or if he's not in a side like Salzburg, who is exponentially better than everybody else in the league, this was why it didn't work out at Leipzig. He had some players that could work his system, and he had some players that couldn't or wouldn't. And so the results were pedestrian. Leipzig has since gone through the manager that they hired to replace Marsch, but the point is valid. At some point, you cannot be a system ideologue. And I look at the managers, when I think about managers that have gotten sides through difficult times, right? So if you look at guys like Sean Dyche, now I know Burnley got relegated last season, but by and large, he's been pretty good at doing this, right? He's good at evaluating the talent, putting the best players on the pitch, and deploying a simple formation that utilizes their talents, because he's like, hey, we cannot afford to drop winnable matches. And that's the difference between a Sean Dyche and a Jesse Marsch. Jesse Marsch has tried to play an ideology versus a practical system that can work for all the players he has. Can Brendan Aronson play Marsch's system? Yes, he can. Can Tyler Adams? Can Pascal Struijk? Yes, they can. Can Luis Sinisterra? I think he probably can. Can Jack Harrison? No. Can Patrick Bamford? Probably not. We don't have much evidence that he can. Can the center halves that we have now? Nope. Can Junior Firpo? Junior Firpo is not a Premier League footballer. Can Rasmus Christensen? Maybe, if everybody else can. Can Luke Ayling? That's what I'm saying. If you have so many question marks or just blatant no's, then you can't deploy that system every single match. You have to be able to say, well, shit. I didn't get what I wanted in the transfer market. I didn't get Charles de Ketelaere. I didn't get Cody Gakpo. Neither of those guys were going to come to Leeds. Let's be very clear. If you're playing at Champions League sides and you're saying, do I want to come to a relegation threatened team? No, of course you don't. Why would you want to be on a team that's potentially going to go down? The brand is not that famous for players playing in the Dutch league or now in Serie A or and Cody Gakpo is going to be playing for a top 4 Premier League side. Leeds United aren't that side. So the fact that we didn't bring in a left back, I don't get it. I don't get why we didn't bring in another forward, but we didn't. And so Jesse can, if and when, I think, I don't know if they will sack him. They should. And if he does get the sack, he can absolutely be justified in feeling a little bit hard done and saying, well, they wanted me to play this system. That's why they hired me. They didn't get me what I asked for in the transfer market. Okay. But very few sides in the world are going to give you everything you want in the transfer market. It's typically not going to happen. So you have to have a dose of practicality. You have to be able to be pragmatic. And that's why Jesse Marsch has to go. I think that he's a good man manager. I think that he's a good personality. I think that he's knowledgeable about the game. He's not stupid, right? I don't think this is a dominant narrative. I think that a couple people picked up on it and they joked about it, the whole Ted Lasso thing. He's not thick. He knows football. The problem is, I think he's a system ideologue. He cannot see. He looks at it sort of like chess players do opening systems and defensive response. They say, as long as I play perfectly, we should win. Players don't play perfectly. And the Leeds in any side that is below top 10 doesn't play perfectly. They're going to make mistakes. So if you're predicating the success of your system on players not making mistakes, you're going to lose matches, right? We cannot afford to roll a team out there and hope for a 1-0 victory because this team doesn't generate enough chances to play anything else. It is unfair. If Jesse Marsch gets the sack, he can feel hard done. But I think it's deserved because you have to be able. I'm just repeating myself now, but it's so frustrating because I'm like, I look at the way this team plays, and there's a reason why for 20 minutes they're on it. For 20 minutes, they're buzzing around, they're dispossessing. They always look like the best side, no matter who they play. They always look like the best side in the first 20 minutes of the match. And then they lose focus. And then they lose energy. And this Leeds United team is too dependent because of a lack of depth on players that haven't shown up. So you have to be able to play a system that can account for the mistakes and account for a loss of form, right? And playing a Jesse Marsch system that requires you, as soon as you get the ball in possession, you play quick and you want to play simple but quick thinking football, right? Jack Harrison doesn't play quickly. He doesn't. I mean, he's a quick movement player, but he doesn't. His brain doesn't move fast, so he bottles it in possession a lot of the time. Even Luis Sinistera, I mean, that ball he played in for Brendan Aronson, God, I thought it would never come. He's holding and holding and holding. This team doesn't have those fundamentals that Marsch is looking for across the pitch. And I'll tell you something, if you play a system where everyone's pressing and it's meant to sow chaos, you have to have everyone on board because at one weak link and everything goes to hell. And that's what we've seen with this Leeds United team. The margins of error are so slim at this level. You cannot afford to roll a team out in an ideological system that does not work for the players you've got. And for that reason, I think Marsch has got to go. I hate to say it, but if you cannot beat Fulham at home, you're probably not going to beat Bournemouth at home. If you can't beat Aston Villa, if you can't beat Everton at home, who are you going to beat? How are you going to stay up? And people will point to the Chelsea victory and say, "Oh, we won against Chelsea 3-0." And that's the last time we've won. We caught a demoralized, unhappy, and disorganized Chelsea team unaware. We punched them in the mouth and they couldn't recover. Great. In order for us to, according to the run of form, which is losing to teams that we should beat in the bottom half of the table, we would have to beat all those top 4 sides we play in order to be in contention to stay up in the Premier League. That's not going to happen. So for that reason, and I hate to say it, I do like Jesse Marsch. I do think he's a good manager. I just don't think, and I think, again, just to reiterate one more time, it's the board's fault that we didn't invest in the side and that we don't have the players to play the system he wants to play. That said, he is too inflexible. He does not make the right changes. And for that reason, I think Jesse Marsch needs to go. Pains me to say it. As an American, I wanted to see an American succeed in the Premier League. It was good that he kept them up last season. But unfortunately, it's time for Jesse Marsch to go. I don't know who you bring in. Maybe you bring in a Sean Dyche. I don't know. But Jesse Marsch is not going to get it done. We have evidence that he won't. You have to be able to beat the Villas of the world, the Evertons of the world. You have to be able to beat the Leicesters of the world. You have to be able to beat the Fulhams of the world, or else you won't stay up. Nottingham Forest just beat Liverpool. If we played Nottingham Forest in that makeup, in like a makeup match, because that was one of the matches that got canceled. If we played them, do you think we'd win? Honestly, tell me right now, do you think we'd win if we played Nottingham Forest? I have no evidence that we'd win. I don't think that we'd win. I have no confidence that we would. And that makes me sad. That makes me sad because I thought the potential was there. And I do think if the board had invested properly in the squad, maybe we'd be better. I don't think we'd be great. I think we'd still be, battling for 12th, 13th, but we wouldn't be in a relegation battle this early in the season before November. But this is where we are. We've dropped winnable matches. And whereas, board, players, and manager, I think in that order, in terms of responsibility, the board's not going to get sacked, and you can't sack all the players. The time to sack the players was was during the offseason when we were trying to rebuild the squad, which we didn't do. So next up in accountability is the manager. It's Jesse Marsch. He gets to go. All right, that's it for me. If you like this, like and subscribe. I guess I'm too pissed off to even care.